So things like, oh, I do some work. Maybe I write a paper, or I do some research in the workplace, and it's quite detailed research. I use AI to help me, and then somebody will ask me about that research the next day, and I can't even, it's like I never even did it, right? So these have been the long conversations, because if you think about it, right, that's very close to what it feels like to be not just human, but valuable and effective and so on. If you feel like you're actually unable to do your work without the help of AI, and somehow it's turning you into a less proficient human being, that can be very worrying. So for people who've seen the movie WALL-E, it's that second part of the movie WALL-E when we're in the spaceship. It's that version where effectively we've just become these lazy blobs that don't do anything because the technology does everything. It's like, I'm in control of this. I'm going to think about what these things are. I'm going to use AI to help me go a little deeper here, a little deeper there. I'm using AI to stretch me versus AI inhibiting me.
Is AI making us dumber? And this is an incredibly useful question at the moment, as we hear how AI is going to solve all of our problems and take all of our jobs. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this question too, and what you discovered most interesting.
Yeah, hello, Matt. Hello, everybody. For folks that are coming new to these questions, we're looking at some of the larger questions that emerged from having written the book, The AI Ready Human, and then talking about the book. And these are sort of collections of things that have come up in discussions or questions people have asked me as we've been doing our virtual and physical book tour. And this one has come up a lot, which is there's sort of like the theoretical, well, is it making us dumber? Which I guess is the new version of the dumbing down of our society concern that has existed for a long period of time. But then, rather interestingly, I would say not everybody, but I would say about 20 to 30% of people that I've spoken to about this topic aren't just concerned that it's making other people dumber, but they're concerned that it's making them dumber. Right? They're seeing some changes in their own behaviors that are concerning to them. So I can think of things, well, I'll tell you things that people have mentioned to me. So things like, oh, I do some work. Maybe I write a paper, or I do some research in the workplace, and it's quite detailed research. I use AI to help me, and then somebody will ask me about that research the next day, and I can't even, it's like I never even did it, right? It's sort of like, it's the work that I didn't make me smarter. It just flowed through me in some way, and wasn't having any, it didn't appear to be having any impact on me in terms of what I knew or what I understood. And then I've had other people as well who, related to that, have expressed some concern that it appears to be impacting their memory. It appears to be impacting their ability to focus. I've spoken to some people who have shared with me that they'll have those tabs that you and I have spoken about before. They'll have those, those various tabs open, and they will find that when let's say a tab unexpectedly closes down and they were working in that tab, they'll open the tab up again and they will have lost immediately. Like the moment the tab closes down, they'll have immediately forgotten what it was they were working on in the tab. So it's like they're holding memory for the work they're doing. It's just completely disappeared. And so these have been the long conversations, because if you think about it, right, that's very close to what it feels like to be not just human, but valuable and effective and so on. If you feel like you're actually unable to do your work without the help of AI, and somehow it's turning you into a less proficient human being, that can be very worrying. And so I think this is why the topic has come up so much, and why we decided that that it was a good idea to use as one of these questions. And so that's really what led to it.
So tell me a little bit about, you mentioned in the article the Flynn Effect and how that impacts this conversation.
Yeah. I suppose before getting into that, I should say what I mean by intelligence. And for the purposes of this work, I looked at it as the ability to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend complex ideas, learn quickly, and learn from experience. So that's quite a big bucket of things that come under intelligence. That is actually probably the most agreed upon definition of intelligence. Now, as I mentioned in the article, I do think that that's probably unhelpfully narrow, because it doesn't encapsulate all aspects of valuable thinking and acting, including ones that are pretty human.
Right.
So, it's that there's nothing in there, for example, about creativity. So I do think that there are challenges with that definition, but the advantage of that kind of definition is that you can measure it fairly well, and you can see what happens to those measurements over time. Right. And so for years, our understanding of intelligence was largely governed by the work that was done on school test scores. And our early understanding of intelligence looked at things like, were people performing well on certain subjects versus performing poorly in other subjects? Because you may not, it's difficult to kind of go back in time and think about this, but there would have been a logical argument to say that the brain only has so much attention it can pay to things. And so if you were to look at school kids, if they're good at English, they're going to be bad at math because they've only got so much intelligence to direct in different places, right? Or you could look at school tests and go, well, maybe they will actually be, rather than one subject being negatively correlated with another subject, maybe they'll be positively correlated, because maybe there will be people that are less intelligent that will do poorly in all of them, and more intelligent that will do better in all of them. And eventually we get to a point where there's sort of like a weak correlation between the two, and then there's this concept of this thing called IQ, or the intelligence quotient, and people get this idea of being, of somebody being slightly more intelligent, one party being slightly more intelligent than another party. Once you start doing that, once you start measuring that, you can now then start measuring what happens to it over time. And for the longest time, people thought that there was just like a base level of intelligence. In fact, still a lot of people think that today. Like you'll hear 100, an IQ of 100 is like average intelligence. But what that misses is that actually there is drift over time. And so for many, many years, we were able to measure a steady increase in human intelligence across many different countries. And so the same work repeated in all kinds of different settings. And a lot of people began that believe that was due to access to additional information, the opening up and democratizing of education, but also related to things like nutrition, overall well-being that people had that was increasing, and as that was happening, the measures of intelligence were increasing. That's the Flynn effect. It would continue. And once this was discovered because it appeared to be related to these things like access to additional information and overall nutrition and wellness, the assumption was for many that this would continue almost indefinitely. But that actually hasn't happened. These same studies that were looking at overall intelligence and saw it increase, they saw around about the turn of the century, probably. So as we headed into the 2000s, but it might have been as early as the mid to late 90s. The Flynn effect started to go into reverse. So in other words, we as a population, and not just in the US, but we as a population started to become less intelligent versus more intelligent. And this has been replicated again across multiple countries throughout the world. So Flynn effect, population increase over time of intelligence, reverse Flynn effect, population decrease of intelligence over time. It's not uniform across all measures of intelligence, but that broadly and largely is what has been happening.
It corresponds directly with the advent of reality television, I believe.
It does. And you know, it's funny, right? There are different people have a lot of different theories as to why this is the case. You can look at that. You can look at social media. There is this sort of generalized concept of dumbing down. Flynn himself, who, by the way, wasn't the very first person to spot this. It just ended up being named after him later. But Flynn himself does believe that dumbing down is part of what is going on here. Dumbing down of society, if you like, is part of what's going on here. But we don't know. We don't know exactly why this is happening, but we do know that it is.
Yeah. So a couple things come to mind, and one is that something you said about the act of learning kind of disappearing in terms of you learned it but not really, and you just close the tab and it's gone. So how much of the impact of AI especially is maybe just an acceleration of those same traits without AI? Like we poured gas on the fire of something that was already happening, which was we were not needing to work as hard to learn things.
Yeah, it's a really good question. The one thing that I would point out to people is there is a difference between getting things done and learning things. And the two, in a world where you are naturally limited in the speed with which you could get things done, you could get a lot of learning along the way. So if you ask me to build a boat, I've got, and let's say you ask me to build a wooden boat, right? I've got to learn a bunch of stuff in order for the boat to get built. If I'm building the boat, and there's not really a huge amount of shortcutting that's going to go on there, right? I've got to learn those skills of woodworking, and I've also got to understand the dynamics of what's going to cause the boat to sink or not. It's going to take me time to build up that collection of skills, and while that collection of skills is happening, I can be building the boat. But if you asked me to, I don't know, coordinate a robot that was gonna build a boat and use AI to learn all of the things that I needed to do to make sure that the boat didn't sink, then I can shortcut the activity itself, the event itself happening, and do that faster than I would naturally learn. So we've had traditional education systems whereby knowledge is built up over courses of months and years, and then we've had what I would say is the sort of learning by doing stuff that happens at work, which is also happening over courses of months and years, because in order to be able to do it, I have to actually learn it. Mm-hmm. And now, without thinking about it, really, we've kind of decoupled the two. So the thing itself can be built super fast, and we can attempt to learn at the same pace, but our brains aren't accustomed to learning at that speed. And so this is more than just a fire hose, right? This is like a flood that arrives. It's like a flash flood, right? It comes, it arrives, and it leaves, and hopefully we pick up something while that is happening. But we're not learning in the same way that we would. So I think there's sort of decoupling thing that has gone on here that is causing something of a challenge for us.
And yeah, you said something there that's interesting, because just because you can find the answer quickly doesn't necessarily prevent you from going down the rabbit hole.
No.
If you chose to.
Yeah.
But you'd have to apply old techniques with the new tools.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's not necessarily the case for how everyone is using it in order to get to this place where we have the reverse Flynn effect, because it's a shortcut and an excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what we're saying here really is that, potentially, is that while learning by doing remains one of the most effective ways to learn in a business context, the decoupling of how much you have to learn in order to do, or I should say, to put it more accurately, there is a decoupling between the learning piece and the doing piece. And as a result, the learning piece can be very, very rudimentary. That implies, unless we are very conscious about it, and unless we say, I actually want to learn this.
Yeah.
How am I going to learn this? It's not going to happen. Whereas before, it just would have happened. Go speak to Bob. He's been in this, he's been working on this for the last 6 months. He knows all about it.
Yeah.
Well, now it's not go to speak to Bob. He's been working on this for the last 6 months. He knows all about it. It is, Bob produced this yesterday. Maybe he remembers something he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the interesting aspect. That's the high level aspect. Now there's other stuff as well, and hopefully we'll get to this. There are some specific studies that look at specific activities that show other things that are sort of happening at the brain level that that also indicate some of the challenges associated with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was thinking about a rudimentary example of when the cell phone first came out and you could reliably start, storing everyone's phone numbers in your phone.
Yeah.
I stopped remembering phone numbers.
Yeah.
It just, but is that something that means that we're getting dumber because we don't remember phone numbers, or is it literally just a utilitarian change that made sense? And the same might be said for a lot of examples where we do get benefits of shortcut to save cycles for more important things. But when you combine it with the ability to shortcut everything, like AI has given us, it's almost like too much to ignore the temptation, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
Can you blame us for the shortcut, but we don't realize that we're hurting ourselves on the way? You know what I'm saying? I
know exactly what you're saying, and let's let's go a little deeper on that because I think it's really important. Um, your example of the phone number is one. A classic example when I was growing up was the calculator, right? And I'm old enough to remember the time where there were serious discussions, not just from parents, but in teaching communities and so on, as to whether calculators belonged in the classroom or not, right? And the theory was that if you brought the calculator into the classroom, then, people would get really bad at mental arithmetic, and that was in some way a bad thing. And the argument that was made, and the argument that ultimately won out, was that if you freed us up from spending a bunch of our time figuring out how to be really good at mental arithmetic, then we could go deeper into more complex mathematical concepts. And I understand this. My degree is in mathematics, and we barely touched numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because once you get into the higher level forms of mathematics, very little of it is about just the behavior of numbers themselves. There's a little bit there, but not a lot. And even if it is, none of it's really arithmetic, right? Arithmetic is a very basic concept that is a foundational concept in mathematics, but is not something that you spend an enormous amount of your time on when you get to the high level. So you take these people and you allow them to be able to do much deeper things because you're taking the trivial things that they do underneath it. The heart of this argument is what I call the utility argument. And so you still, because the calculator exists and now our phones exist, and we are one press away from being able to do anything that requires that, we don't really need it anymore. And so your phone numbers fit into that category, the calculator fits into that category, and so on and so forth. The ultimate extension of the utility argument is that actually human intelligence doesn't really matter at all, right? Because as AI becomes more and more integrated into our world, and is there and is one click away, or we've gone all the way to brain-computer interfaces that are embedded in us. We, as I put in the article, we can all be more intelligent than Turing without even having to learn to read.
Yeah.
Right. All because we all have access to it. That's the theory. If we have access to it and it's always there, then why would we need it?
Yeah.
But there is clearly a difference between individual cases, like you say, and then all of those individual cases coming together with a general purpose form of artificial general intelligence that we don't want or need because it's much easier to rely upon the technology. So for people who've seen the movie WALL-E, it's that second part of the movie WALL-E when we're in the spaceship. It's that version where effectively we've just become these lazy blobs that don't do anything because the technology does everything.
Yeah.
That was never an issue when it was individual use cases where we could always move up the stack. It is potentially a case once you get into general purpose considerations. So that is the ultimate part of the utility argument. And I think there are strong arguments against the utility argument being the be-all and end-all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when, and maybe you can chat a little bit about these studies you're talking about, but it's so recent too.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we might be overblowing it. We might be overcorrecting for it, or it might be a trend that is a one-way downhill. It's really hard to determine. Like much like any other technology that comes on, you start to be, this is gonna ruin. Television is gonna ruin everything, or social media is gonna ruin everything. You could argue that we launched social media not really realizing the impact, and now are we dialing it back? Who knows? So much is happening. It's like a flood of all of these things coming at us, that it feels almost overwhelming at times to really speculate where it'll settle in. Like as the mobile phone has settled in as a phone.
Yeah.
Right? But in regards to all the other things it does, we're still trying to absorb that impact. And it is a new emerging thing we're trying to figure out. But we've been Googling things and giving away our memory for quite a while. We do have information about that.
Well, and I think the interesting thing, Matt, is most people are not having these conversations, right? I mean, I'd be curious to know, like, what proportion of our listeners were even aware of the reverse Flynn effect before, coming into listening to this podcast. And so it feels to me like something that has been going on in the case of the reverse Flynn effect that has been going on for at least 20 years and possibly 30. We should decide as a society whether we care about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like we can choose to meet it with a shrug, and maybe some people would argue that given our behavior, we do meet it with a shrug.
Yeah.
But I think many people would be surprised to even understand that generally that there is evidence that we're getting less smart, and they might start to think about the fact that may matter. I personally, actually think it does matter. I think it matters quite a lot.
Yeah.
And the flip to that utility argument that I was making is what I call in the article the uniqueness argument.
Yeah.
And the heart of the uniqueness argument is that it does matter hugely because human intelligence is of value in its own right, and it's fundamentally different to what AI does.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if we're making a case that the best case future for a society is one where you've got this amazing powerful technology, but you've got human beings guiding it, controlling it, conducting it, determining what it does and where it goes, that kind of implies that the human beings have to be fairly smart. And investing in that is really important. And I want to be clear that from my perspective, the argument I'm making here is not saying, oh, that's because education's rubbish, or that I'm not saying the education system has failed us and it's turning people into idiots or anything like that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the relationship that we have with the world and the technology around us and media and all these various other things, that's creating an environment at a societal level that is impacting us negatively. And the studies back that up, because they show that this reverse Flynn effect that I'm talking about is across all demographics. It's across all levels of education. It's across all age groups, right? It's across all of these things. So it shows us that is something about what's happening in the world. And the argument that I would make, I get your point about reality TV, right? But it's and I know that was sort of meant somewhat tongue in cheek, right? It's clearly some if you like, environmental factor.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest thing that has changed since the 1990s? It's been omnipresent technology.
Yeah.
So it probably plays some role. Mm-hmm. So I would say we should figure out if we care. And if we do care, we should talk about it. And then we should figure out what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
Your point about the role of, the specific role that AI plays in it, agree, TBD. But what we do know, at least, I know from the work that I've done, is that how you interact with AI does have an impact on the value that you get out of AI.
Yeah.
And it does have an impact on your ability to continue to develop as a human. And I think people need to think very carefully about that before they do AI as the crutch, AI as the, I'll just have it all do the things I'm not terribly good at type version. Right. And before they repeatedly and continuously do that and mindlessly pick it up to do various things, if they can just think about it a little bit differently and use it a little bit differently, then the chances of them having a relationship with AI that allows them continue to develop as a human is much greater, versus the other possibility was it just becomes the replacement. It does your brain work out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really great. It's a wild time to try to balance all this, and I think your point is good. That is there enough conversation at enough levels to penetrate the general public, or does it just, as it appears on our phone, it just, you don't even you didn't even have to opt in anymore to search generally being the way it answers your questions. Google just turned into it.
Yeah.
It all, so I guess, who was it recently had a thing where you could turn it off? Maybe Firefox or there was some web browser, I think, that said you could actually turn off AI in all of the answers. It's fascinating. And you also mention in there the how you use it, but also the when. And just if you could just talk a little bit more about the when piece, because I think that's an interesting an interesting lens to put on it. Yeah.
You and I have spoken about this a lot, and when I'm training people and consulting with people on this, I definitely talk about this a great deal. Particularly when it comes to thinking and communicating, I'd urge people to be very careful about thinking about when AI comes into the picture. So you can run this experiment yourself. If you are creating something that is net new, and you start by asking AI for ideas, and then you go through the whole of the creation process all the way to the point of sending something, you will likely end up with something that is very framed by that initial response that AI came up with. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, what you're effectively doing when you say to AI is like, I don't really have an opinion on this. You frame the landscape for me. And then having AI frame the landscape for you, it's extremely likely that your thinking is going to be constrained by that landscape that AI has just framed. Whereas if you do this, even if it's fairly rudimentary, if you spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, thinking carefully about how you would approach this yourself, how you would answer these questions yourself, and then understanding, okay, well, I need a little bit of I need a little bit of AI to help me here, or I need AI to help me go deeper here. When you get to the point where you develop the end product, you'll find something that is much richer and a blend between what you've done and what AI has done.
Yeah.
So I bring this to my writing as well now, Matt. So I'm working on a follow-up to the AI Ready Human at the moment. And when I'm thinking through concepts that are going to be in the book, before I write anything, and definitely before I explore any concepts alongside AI, I'm literally writing down on a pen and paper before every writing session what direction it's going to go, what are the key ideas that I want to flesh out, and so on. And the richness that I'm getting from doing that initial work myself isn't just helping me retain agency and think what I think about it, but it's also helping create product that is better. So so it's a win-win, because you create something that is richer and better, but you also retain it because you've thought about it and you created it. It's like, I'm in control of this. I'm going to think about what these things are. I'm going to use AI to help me go a little deeper here, a little deeper there. I'm using AI to stretch me versus AI inhibiting me.
Yeah. Well, it is a fascinating time to be paying attention to all of this, and hopefully some of these conversations will resonate with more folks that can talk to more people about it. I think you're right. Conversations is going to be the key. So, all right, Paul. Look forward to the next big question, and thanks for the explanation on this one.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.